Good afternoon. Welcome to High Five. Big handies up, please. Thank you very much. It's Friday. We're actually recording this on a Friday. Can you believe it? Finally, it's Friday. We can actually have a conversation on a day that we actually put this content out on. Well, I'm delighted that we're joined today by Helen Amery. Helen, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No,
Hi, Helen.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
You were nominated a few weeks ago by wonderful human rainbow, Sarah Parrott. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Sarah's tuned in right now. She's the first person that's clicked on the LinkedIn post, and she's sitting here glued to the screen right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she nominated you when we spoke to Sarah a few weeks ago, and she really spoke from the heart about you, which I think is just lovely to hear people really unprepared and unplanned just talk completely from the heart about how she found you. So I wanted to replay a couple of things. I'm not sure how recently you watched the video back, but she talked about when she was finding it quite tricky sometimes juggling life's priorities, about being a single mum and trying to manage the priorities of all the work that she's doing. That she says it just helped her to really connect with her inner being, the way that you talk and the way that you share about that innate brilliance that's within all of us. And there was one word within all of it that actually, I think, sung to me personally, is about soulfulness and about soul, about really understanding what's there. So I thought that was magical as a description. And if anyone could get close to that with language that were describing anything that I do, I would be deeply proud. So I'd love to know more about you. Tell us a bit about yourself, because I've seen your name float around on social media in circles, and I realised this morning that we have 55 connections mutually on LinkedIn. And it's almost like a family of connections that I could rattle through. So I'll hold those on pause for a moment, because there's so many people that I looked at this morning and went, wow, we know each other. They're all connected. And all these different people. Well, now, tell us a wee bit about yourself, Helen. Tell us a wee bit about you, if you can.
Yeah, so Wild Fig Solutions is the business, which is currently in its 7th year. So I started it, in fact, a connection with you guys. I used to be in retail as well. I was in HR. Most of my career was in boots.
You're our kind of people then. That's
we're light in the gang. So yeah, I did love retail, and then kind of did that thing where corporate life didn't seem to be quite doing it for me anymore, and I'd had an operation actually just before I left. So in the November 2013, I think it was, I went back to work after my op, and I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of like same old stuff. Not much has changed, and it's all the same storylines and politics, and because I'd been off. In fact, that was when I first came across Twitter, because I was off and I was still like mentally capable once I got over the initial recovery bit. And so I discovered people like Perry Timms and Doug Shaw and Ian Pettigrew. So all the kind of what in my head, clearly made up, is the original sort of Twitter HR learning and development crew, but new to me. Like goodness knows how long it'd been there before I found it. But it's like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. All these people out here doing really good work, which looked like the kind of work I wanted to do, you know, improving cultures and leadership and that kind of thing. So that really was the beginning of me starting to think, maybe there's something else for me to do apart from being in corporate. So I'd left in the spring, just before spring 2014, without a job to go to, without the business set up, but just, that decision happened. It's like, no, I'm going to leave. So, and that was in the middle of my coaching qualification as well. So I hadn't even qualified as a coach as I set up my coaching business. Thank goodness for my husband, who was of that. So I spent kind of like the first 5 years-ish of the business, very much working from like a psychology basis of coaching, and working as a coach, consultant, trainer, facilitator, you know, working with organizations on sort of culture change projects rather than just doing coaching. There was all those different elements within, like where organizations wanted to get to. And then towards the end, had a joint business in team coaching with another coach. And around that time, so 2017-ish, there were just a few things where that question started to come up going, or this observation of it's not working. Like everything I've been doing, all this work I've been putting into improving myself and developing, it's not working. Like here I've got some relationships which aren't working. I've got kids who I keep shouting at a lot and being really stressed with, and I'm rushing around, and I'm supposed to be this expert in emotional intelligence and helping people be balanced and help them ask questions and be open and not judgmental. And then I was looking at myself going, oh my God, I've got judgments all over the place. And yeah, these really difficult relationships where it was really highlighting this like control, judge, critical, and like, terrible. Like I was really in that, this is awful. Like, how can I be like this after all this time? And also there was one client in particular where my coaching wasn't working either. Like this was a new experience. Nothing was helping. No matter which tools, approaches, techniques we worked on together, it was like nothing's changing. If anything, things were getting worse. So all of this started me to ask, so what else is going on? Like this doesn't look right. This can't be it. There must be something else. And it started me off on a track. So I did yoga at that time. I'd been doing yoga for a couple of years. And I was really curious about my yoga teacher who kept quoting the Buddha. And I was like, God, that guy sounds like he's a coach. Like he sounds like a really grounded coach. So it led me to a book called Buddhism Plain and Simple. And that then had me go, wow, there's something in this. It was very much the essence of Buddhism. So it was very much about stripping back from all the stuff that goes around it. And so it set me off on like this quest really of how can I do that? Like how could I bring that to my work, or who else might be doing stuff in that space that would do that? And so then, I discovered what I do now, which has been like the last 3 years, and it's been amazing. Which is and that's what Sarah got involved with last year when she came on my course. So I'll stop there because I feel like I've
no,
said
not at all, not at all.
It's fascinating, yeah. It's so that period of time that you came through, Helen, do you feel like you're in a completely different space now? Do you feel like you've found the enjoyment again of what you're doing?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny. So I never didn't enjoy my old coaching, and to be fair, I didn't even particularly say I didn't enjoy my life pre coming to this. Things looked fine. It looked like quite a normal life where there were just problems, and kind of there was almost like this acceptance. Well, yeah, of course there are some things that are going wrong, but there was clearly like a niggle beneath it as well that was saying, yeah, this thing of, but it can't just be this. Like you can't have spent 10 years doing like working on yourself and still be behaving in such a terrible way. But it was quite striking when I came to sit down with my first coach in this work, and he's like, right, so tell me all the stuff that you think you need to change. And it was like, oh wow, there is actually quite a lot there that had kind of just been accepted as life's just a bit shit sometimes. So it was an interesting time of sort of turning direction.
It's fascinating when a coach can lean into you a bit to ask you to question what are you becoming by what you're doing through your work and the lens of the activity you do from it. And I can really relate to what you said there about you see yourself even through the eyes of your own kids about how you're dealing with things. You lose your temper and you go, that shouldn't be doing that. This is not what I preach when I'm doing work, but I'm doing this in my own home life. And I remember that last year, gosh, during homeschooling and stuff, trying to juggle so many different things. And Rory and I were chatting about a book actually, just when you were talking about Buddhism as well, about Carol Honro's book about the art of slow, and how slowness can actually provide so much when your pace becomes something quite different. That it gives you more space to make the right choices and choose the right options for yourself and allow it to form naturally, rather than trying to push something through over the line and do it by set date and have something signed off. And I've learned a lot in that product-based life actually, because my journey's kind of consultancy and now moving into building a business that does this, that it's a product that provides stories, but actually being patient with it and allowing things to take place rather than having to do things such a rapid pace. I can really identify with. I think it's really important. I was going to ask you,
Buddhism.
Sorry, Roy.
Sorry, Scott. I was just going to say, I think Buddhism in particular as well is such a fascinating subject for ourselves in the UK. And there's so many people are adapting across to it and taking lessons from it. And various different people that I've worked with over the years have either completely gone to living a Buddhist lifestyle or have taken little pieces from it. So Scott and I and our good friend Kirsty Mack recently read a book on the life of David Bowie. And the book was called The Tao of Bowie, and it was all about his experiences through Buddhism and life lessons that you could apply to it. And I think you could get a lot from books like that. And I don't say this to name drop in any way, Helen, but I shared this with Scott a few years ago that I was very, very fortunate to take my partner to. Joanne has studied Buddhism for years, and the Dalai Lama came to Northern Ireland. So we got tickets to be able to go and be in the audience for it. And I personally didn't know much about Buddhism and probably still don't as much as I should. But I remember very much the lessons that came out of everything he said that day was life will get in the way. You're a human being, so don't judge yourself too hard for it. Just realize that you're right where you're supposed to be. And everything's solvable if you just take time to think about what the answers are and where the solutions are. And that was probably some of the biggest lessons that I took away from it. And there is something very grounding and very centering within that whole aspect of spirituality and Buddhism and different cultures and religions out there. And I think what's interesting is how people can develop their solutions themselves or working with a great coach.
Yeah, because really going back to what you said, Scott, about the innate brilliance part that Sarah mentioned, whether it's Buddhism, because what I've found is, so I'm not a Buddhist, and I don't say that I'm a Buddhist coach. Spiritual, yes, but not Buddhist, because I've gone from that Buddhism book into an exploration called the Three Principles, and then into non-duality, and alongside it been exploring quantum physics and the forefront of maths and biology, which are all pointing us back to the same space of our nature. Everything is taking us back to that kind of 0 point, the point of stillness, the point of peace, which is always within us and always just hidden by, as you say, Rory, like life comes along, we get caught up in the stories and what we think it means and what this says about me and how on earth will I solve this, and we believe all that and get so caught in that story that we forget who we really are. We forget that innate brilliance and that innate peace and innate clarity that we are naturally. And there's actually such a simplicity to it, because when we recognize how we naturally work and how the mind gets in the way of that really, really beautiful process, it just stops making sense to follow the stories of the mind. So there's no whereas some Buddhist practices, there's a requirement of you must do X, Y, and Z in order to get to, whereas the approach I take is absolutely not. If any of that stuff makes sense to you, then go for your life and do it. But really, the less we try and clutter the system up with our ideas of what we should be doing, the more easily it flows and the more easily it works. And that's when you have experiences like you had, Scott, of things just unfolding as they need to in the moment.
It was that slowness that provided it to me. There was like, rather than doing a day business planning, is actually getting out on my bike for 3 hours and sitting and stopping by a river somewhere and just sitting looking into the river and wondering where next, rather than trying to force it and I need to get this done by X date and I need to have certain things signed off through this person. Just let it naturally flow. And I've actually discovered so many hidden treasures that I didn't realize were in front of me by just taking space out to peer into that innateness and really try to find the answers that I'm trying to look for in things. The card that Sarah selected for you, I thought was a fascinating one. This one here, with the Boy George, Boy George ish, just in case Boy George is watching this and he sues us.
I reckon he will be.
Let's call him Boy Stephen or something that keeps us safe. Don't worry, be happy. Obviously, the lyrics of that come from Bobby McFerrin's song, but I think the principle she was talking about is how much that helped her is that even though the bustle of life is getting really, really busy, not to worry too much about it, because the answers will come from you. What does that language mean to you? How does it rest and sit with you if you think about don't worry, be happy, through the lens of the way in which you work as Sea Life?
Yeah, it's so true, because including what you've just described about normal way would be, oh, where's my deadlines? Who needs what by when? Am I going to get it all done? It's a form of worry. It's the mind going into imagination of past and future. So bringing, oh, but remember that time when you didn't make that deadline, and remember the consequences that came from that, and projecting into the future about, oh, and what if you don't, and your reputation and the business and the money, and it makes up all this stuff. Yeah, dragging from the past, bringing from the future, crowds the present moment with all these ideas, and literally stops us seeing clearly, because now we're like, the lens is covered over with all this stuff which blocks the view. And so the more we see that, because that's all that worry is. In fact, I was talking to a client yesterday, and it really struck him because I was like, oh, so it looks like worry is important, like it serves a function. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't. Like, it has zero purpose. It does nothing to improve our outcomes. It does nothing to improve where we go, for how we get from A to B. All it does is clutter the viewfinder. And like you said, by going off for a bike ride, clarity, things get revealed that were actually already there. It's like the aperture opens.
Yeah.
So it's not that new stuff is appearing. It's all already present. It's just we can't see it when we're crowded out with worry and all these ideas of what we think we need and how we think it should be. So yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it's the crux of the work. It's recognizing all these stories of the mind fundamentally don't know anything about the outside world and achieve nothing but clutter the view.
Yeah. I
remember the first time. Sorry, Scott. We keep going.
You just struck something in my mind, but you go.
Yeah, it struck something with me as well, and that card always does. That it reminds me of when I first moved to the States, and I was working with an old mentor there, and he introduced me to the work of Ben Zander. And I think the best Ben Zander elements that you can take and that stick with me are just, don't listen to the voice inside your head. Because for me, that's where that worry always comes from, where things get clouded is, as you say, Helen, it's, oh, remember that deadline, or, oh, remember when this went wrong, and what if this goes wrong again? And sometimes it's just getting back to, as you both said, finding that space of where you feel grounded and where you feel at peace. And for me, last Saturday, I finished work, took my son off to the Northern Irish coast here, took a photograph of Scotland, which I could see in the distant centre of Scotland, to say hello. Nice. And it was amazing. It was just, that space takes me back to where I feel very much, that's where I can think my problems away. That's where I can find solutions to, like, how do we solve complexities of shipping and all of those kind of things that just bring you back to, okay, this is where I feel at ease. This is where I can think about what the next week's need to look like. But it's that, don't listen to that voice inside your head lesson that I always go back to, and his other great lesson, which is don't take yourself so seriously. That's the one that I always need to listen to at that point, because if you're taking yourself seriously, you're allowing your worries to multiply on top as well.
Yeah. And I love that. And what becomes available is recognize you don't even need to go to these nice places. You don't even need to go on a bike ride. It's like the more you recognize the false narrative as what it is, just naturally we stop paying attention to it. Like, the intelligence we are is really smart, way smarter than that intellect is. And it's the same intelligence that grows trees and grass and makes babies. Like, oh my God, it's way beyond the capabilities of our conceptual mind. And the more we see that and recognize that that's the powerhouse, that's what's doing the work, and the intellect just, literally gets in the way of it, then it's just an obviousness to not pay attention to it. So you no longer need to be in a certain place or in a certain state or do a certain practice, because it becomes the way of being. It's what we're designed for. So the system kind of wants to go that way. It wants to flow in that direction.
Brilliant. No, I was just going to say, Scott, you may edit that bit out where you don't need to go on a bike ride, because if Mary sees that and she knows you've been going for a bike.
Oh, yeah.
No,
You don't have to not go on a bike ride. It's not a requirement.
I've never done this in my office before, but this is how much I appreciate a bike ride. I've got 3 of them up my wall in my office. My brother came in here to fit my floor in here a few weeks ago, and he was like, "That you've actually got matching shoes for each of your bikes. You're taking this a bit too seriously." I'm like, "But that's my space. That's my."
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with anything. Like, yeah, really, I'm not saying we chuck all these things out. It's just
no.
It's a freedom. There's a freedom beyond thinking I need. Like, so for me, like before I came into this, actually part of that journey was starting to transcendental meditation practice, which meant 20 minutes twice a day, which I did for maybe, I started in February and I stopped it completely in the October. So over that period of time, certainly from the February to till early autumn, it really looked like I needed that. Like, I really need to meditate, and if I don't meditate, oh, woe betide, you know. I need to de-stress. I need to, and that need, the idea of need and lack, is the signal that says, oh, okay, there's a story going on there. I didn't know at the time, like it made sense to do that.
Yeah.
But then as I came into this conversation, meditation stopped happening, because it's like, yeah, the world's actually not doing anything to me. I'm doing it to myself through my thinking. Mm-hmm. And so I don't need to recover from anything, because I just need to stop believing that thinking, and then I stop suffering. That looks a lot easier than having to sit down for 20 minutes twice a day. Mm. So nothing gets taken off the table, because I'll still sometimes meditate now, but it's not I've got to, or else it might happen.
I tripped myself up a wee bit, actually, going back to that book that Rory was talking about. We read it as a wee book club between the 3 of us.
Nice.
And we were chatting about it as a wee bit of a review of it. And I said, do you know what, I struggled reading the book? And not that it's not a great book, because it's a fab little book, and I'm Bowie daft, absolutely crazy about Bowie. But every time I got to like a part in the book I was really enjoying it, it was like, stop and do this, stop and practice this. And to be fair, the author wasn't telling you to do that. That was me instructing myself to do that at that point in time. I could have read to the end of the chapter, and then a couple of days later said, oh, I've now got time in my day to sit and do that. But because it was the order and the flow of the chapter, it almost as if it was like telling me, you need to put the book down now, Scott, and you need to go and sit in your lounge, just sit in a place and do this. And I was really getting quite, to use a good Scottish word, quite jaggy for me when I was trying to read it. I couldn't get to the end of the chapter and flow at the rhythm of, I was really enjoying the narrative of what was being written. I had to keep stopping and starting to do something to prove I was worthy to go on to the rest of the chapter. And when we did the review that night, I remember, I can't remember if it was you or Kirsty that said to me, Rory, but like, you don't need to do that. You can do that on your bike. Yeah. Whenever you want. You don't need to stop and start and do it to that rhythm, but you just provide that narrative to yourself that it has to be done in that order or that flow to get stuff to be done. We make life hard for ourselves sometimes when create some bigger challenges, things that could be far simpler if we thought a bit more consciously about choices. Brill. Listen, that's all absolutely magical, but I want to ask you a slightly more abstract question. Figs, wild figs. I think figs are a massively undervalued fruit.
Oh, really? I don't actually like them.
Oh, and I did say before we started this recording, I wouldn't ask you any left field questions, but when you were talking there, I was like, so why wild figs? Where did you get that from?
Why, if you don't even like figs? So it was actually in that time when I was thinking about leaving corporate, and I met with Perry Timms for lunch, and he was so helpful, asking me questions about what I enjoyed and why I'd want to leave and why would I stay, and just the kind of work that I was doing and things. And he'd made a comment about, oh, you seem really curious and like you always want to get to the root cause. I was like, oh my God, yeah, totally. Like, I'm so not about cover it over with a sticky plaster. It's like, no, what's really causing this, so we can get to that. And so I'd left that conversation, was driving and back up the road, and I was like, deep, get to the root cause. Ooh, trees, I like trees. And so I'd got home and Googled the trees with the deepest roots in the world. And so it was a choice between the wild fig or the baobab. And I was like, well, wild fig. I like that. So it came from that. And it's kind of continued, because like at the time when I did like psychology based coaching, I was like, oh yes, I'm really working at the deepest level here, like I'm really getting to the core limiting beliefs. And then I came into this exploration, I'm like, oh, there's a whole other level of deep. Like awesome, I get to go even deeper. So it's it's kind of, and who knows, there might be more still to come. But yeah, that was where the
takes me back to the connection. So Perry's actually done a story for one of the cognitized cards. Actually,
oh, nice.
we haven't actually published it on the site yet, actually, but I admired a lot of Perry's writings actually, and his work and stuff as well. And we'd connected, and he was one of our speakers at Kindfest last year when cool. Joe Savannah and I did Kindfest. Perry was one of our guests at it. But actually, just looking through some of our mutual connections, there's a lot of these people are actually quite deeply involved in cognitizing. I've done stories, so Bev Holden, Sherry Brenton, Kevin Monroe we chatted to last week, actually, Stella Collins. All these people are all in that space of actually helpfulness and gratitude and appreciation, and they've all been a brilliant support to both of us actually over the course of the last 12 months, and the work that we're doing. I could write off a whole page of names. Julie Driver, Joss Button, David D'Souza, Cat Hayes. There we go. I'm not going to go into all these names, but listen, what we do at the end of High Fives is we normally invite someone to pick a card, but we're going to mix up the way we're going to work today, mainly because I forgot to send you an email with the cards in it. So I thought, if you tell us the person you would like to nominate, and then what Rory and I will maybe do is pick a couple of cards each, and then let you choose from those cards that you think would be the best one for that person based on the story you've shared. So tell us about.
I'm really curious what you'll pick. Based
on So we're fascinated to see what we go with. So tell us about the person and why, first of all, and then we'll have a little dive around for a card that we think would be a good matchup.
So my pick is a wonderful woman who may also be in your list of connections, I don't know, but called Claire Haynes.
Okay.
And her business has a connection with mine too, because hers is Wildfire Spark. So me with my wild fig and her with our wildfire. We've been friends for a number of years, actually from those early days of being on Twitter and going to HR and L&D conferences together and stuff. And she's just phenomenal. She's smart, and she's fiery. She's got gorgeous red hair, and she's so courageous, but she's also so loving and caring. And she went through a marriage breakup a few years ago, but so gracefully, like so adult with it all. There wasn't so often with break, and I know she won't mind me saying this, so often there can be, animosity and difficulties. And her and her ex are so grown up about the whole thing and co-parent brilliantly, and have kept supporting each other, through the experience. It's just amazing. I've never known that before. So now she's co-parenting, but essentially a single mum, still running a business, has a property business as well, and works in the L&D space. So she's really big on getting honest conversations happening, like getting real with people and being human, and having the kind of conversations we need to be having. So she's just amazing. And on top of that, she keeps, she's continues to be curious for herself, for her own learning, for how can I do this even better? So there's just so much. She's great.
I definitely I think I'm trying to remember when I don't think I've spoken to Claire directly, but I'm sure we've came into contact in some form. I do recognise her name. I always need to let a face to connect as well. Okay, right. I say so. Let's think about, Rory, have you been shuffling cards while Helen was chatting there that you've got some?
I have. Just as Helen was talking, I was kind of looking, going, oh, I think that card, and oh, I think that card. So I've got two.
Okay.
Well, I've got one for the first half of the story, but you tell me yours while I'm looking for my second one, because I've got another one I was thinking of.
Oh, I'm going to have 4 to pick from.
You're going to have 4 to pick from. Let's see what one you
Unless you pick the same ones.
Oh, you might do that. Interesting.
So we might do it, and if we can swap them up again. But my first card was If I Could Tell You One Thing.
Oh, okay.
Because just from how you've made that introduction, I think there's some guidance that Claire can share. And my second card is listen without judgment. So if I could tell you one thing and listen without judgment. Okay.
Nice.
So Scott, what were yours?
Okay, so my first card I went for was the balancing act. Because there was a lot of balance within what you said about there, about balancing the co-parenting thing and actually focusing on their business is helping people to find their true voice and their one voice. And the other card I picked was just because of the first thing that you said when you described the similarity between both of your businesses and beliefs was the seeds of growth.
I almost picked that.
There's a real nature sense in that this card is about helping people to blossom. In fact, Stella's on this card when you scan it. She's one of the stories on it as well. So there, Rory, do you want to hold yours up? And we'll give Helen a chance of all four to
yes
from. And you can tell us which one you want to go for.
Oh, it's hard. I think I'm going to go for seeds of growth.
Okay, magic. Well, that was
the
other one.
Nice cards.
That's brilliant. Okay, well, we'll make that reconnection happen, and we'll get a conversation recorded over the course of the next few weeks ahead of it, and let you hear that as well. Helen, it's been absolutely lovely to chat to you. Really fascinating stories you've shared with us, and a great insight into
thank you, Helen.
What you're doing as well, and I've satisfied my curiosity about why figs. So thanks for doing that as well. So I'll finish as we normally finish. Oh, actually, just before we do, we normally have a little gift for people.
Oh, okay.
At the end of our conversations, and Rory is in his new den, his new toy shop on his upper floor, and he was showing you earlier his lovely textured wall covering up artificial.
A lovely grass wall.
Grass that's here. But what I'm going to invite Rory to do after we finish today, we're having a wee pre-chat about this earlier on, is he's going to pick a little game that we think would be befitting of our conversation and pop it off in the post to you.
Oh,
so you get that as a wee gift after as well, and you've got something you can have some fun with over the.
I'm going to send you some fig rolls with it, but I'm glad you didn't really like figs.
I'll find somebody to give them to.
That's fig rolls. Oh,
no, do you see? Actually, I could.
Oh, the nicest biscuits ever.
I just.
Oh, you couldn't see. Everybody could eat a fig roll. I could eat 2 packets of fig rolls.
I gives me really bad memories of my granny's biscuit tin of fig rolls. It was the ones that were almost at the bottom that nobody touched. I love one. Anyway, high five. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
You.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.